Assim, quando o corretor deu precisar em cima da nossa casa, a gente falou que tinha que fazer. A gente tem lá para casa quadrada, né? Vamos fazer um downsize, então ver live, eles moram de desfazer de muito. Dá assim. A gente tem espaço, a gente vai acumular o que não precisa, né? Tinha espaço, mas tem caixa de a gente pega de tudo 5 anos, não cabe em pé, guardando um pouquinho, não sei o que, várias coisas, não precisa, sabe?
Aí, eu apareci com você também.
Ele vai ficar só.
Não tô brincando.
Vai ficar só. Olá.
Assim é não identificado, né? Só aparece um pedaço. Fique à vontade. Pode botar outra cadeira aqui, ó. Tem cadeira? Pode... pronto, foi lá.
Sim, mas você está no programa já.
Pois é, mas eu acho que ele vai te transmitir só essa parte, né? Vou chegar para cá.
Tudo bem. Boa noite, pessoal. Boa noite. Bom dia aí. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to first start off by welcoming everybody here today. We'll be doing this through Zoom. So I'm currently in Brazil, as you can see, and this is just a trial run because in a couple of weeks we'll have somebody from Brazil, from the Spiritist Federation of Spiritus Mato Grosso, giving a talk for us. So this is a trial run, and if it works, we'll be very happy to have them help us out. And a reminder that we have our AGM, our annual general meeting, happening on April 10th at 12 p.m. right after our talk. And it'll be roughly an hour where we update everybody, all our members, on the things that we did last year, the things that we're planning to do this year. And then we'll also go through the financials and also have our election for the year of 2022 and 2023. And that is the main announcement. And I want to share my screen with you so we can start. Perfect. Okay, so we talked about this last time, and this is just an announcement that as FSS is reopening, we would like to invite you all, if you would like to become a volunteer, please reach out to us. We have many opportunities for volunteers, so we'd be happy to take you in and get your help as much as possible. As we all like to say, help us to keep spreading love in Calgary. And now we usually start with a text, and we'll be reading a text from the book Our Daily Bread, chapter 7, called The Seed. And it's a passage from Paul, from the first letter to the Corinthians, when he says, when you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just the seed, perhaps of wheat or of something else. And Emmanuel brings us this reflection, saying that as we observe things within the tasks assigned to nature, the seed represents the sacred role of priestess, of the service of the Creator, and of life. As glorious heir to divine power, nature cooperates in the evolution of the world and silently transmits the sublime lesson full of infinite values to mankind. It wisely exemplifies the need for starting points, the just requirements for work, the proper places, and appropriate times. Some restless and insatiable individuals have yet to understand nature. They expect great accomplishments from one day to the next. They forcefully impose their tyrannical measures by the use of power, arms, or otherwise betray the profound laws of nature. They accelerate processes of ambition, establish transitory control, glorify themselves over fictitious conquests, become aggrandized, and fall without even succeeding in accomplishing any sanctified edification for themselves or for anyone else. They have not learned the lesson from the minuscule seed that provides wheat for the daily bread and guarantees life in all the regions of planetary struggle. To know how to commence constitutes an important service. In the redeeming effort, it is necessary not to lose sight of the small possibilities, such as a gesture, a conversation, an hour, a phrase, which can be the instrument of glorious seeds for immortal edification. Therefore, it is indispensable never to disregard them. So now, let us join in prayer. Let us close our eyes. Elevating our thoughts to our Master Jesus. Feeling his love surrounding our hearts, our bodies. And thank him for the opportunity of being here today in person. And feeling the energy of love around us as we open our minds, we open our thoughts, we open our hearts to hear some of the words from Emmanuel, from the Spiritist doctrine, this consoler that was sent to us by Christ to help us in our daily struggles and to help shine our own light brighter and brighter each day. God, help us in our reflections, in our inspirations, in our inspirations here today, that we're all in sync, we're all connected, and we're all utilizing this time to strengthen our communion with God, with Jesus, with our guardian angels, all these creatures these spirits that are so focused on loving us, on welcoming us, and inspiring us to be better, to be more loving and kind. So be it. Thank you all. So today we'll be talking about, it's a book by the Spirit Emmanuel. And I'm just going to check that everything is working out on YouTube. Just give me one second.
If you want, I can keep track of it.
Okay, thank you. So today, perfect. So this is a series of 3 talks. And Louise, are you able to turn the music off, please? And it's a series of 3 talks based on a book called Calm, Calma in Portuguese, by the Spirit Emmanuel through the medium Chico Xavier. And it's a short book, has 33 chapters. And in every text, it talks about ways for us to achieve some serenity, to build some peace in us. And 3 texts caught my attention quite a bit. I've already done 2, and this is the last one, which is text 11. And it's titled Pruning Irritations. Just to describe the word pruning, in Portuguese is the word podando, where we're trying to prune our irritations so we can prevent it from growing too much to the point where it gets us out of control. So we can learn to prune it at the right time, so we can start to build peace within our hearts, within our actions. And again, this is the book. It's called Calma, as you can see on the top left corner there. And I highly recommend this book. It's very easy to read and very short. So let us start. And Emmanuel is very direct to the point. And in every single time, in every single paragraph, he's always inviting us to go within, to learn a little bit more about our thoughts, about our feelings, and what can we do to transform our irritations. So let us start. So he first starts off by talking about he starts with, if perhaps you still have the habit of getting angry, and if you're already able to recognize its damages, you can clearly eradicate it, focusing on our own renewal. And I can listen to you guys. So if you have any questions, if you want to make any comments, please do so, interrupt me, and then we can have more of an interaction. One of the great opportunities and advantages of having this live and with you guys at the center there. So pretend I'm there talking to you. So in this first paragraph, Emmanuel is inviting us to to quite a few reflections here. The first one is, if we have the habit of getting angry, this is when Emmanuel is inviting us to recognize our feelings of anger, our feelings of hate. And in doing so, in just that piece of recognition of being able to be self-aware of our feelings, doesn't matter what those feelings are, but being honest and self-aware, that's already a sign of humility. It's already a sign that we are improving somewhat. So again, just realizing that we're angry, when we're angry, it's already a step in the right direction. And then he says, and if you're already able to recognize the damages, here is where he's advising us to realize the consequences of being angry, of hate, of any feelings that bring some of that egotistical within us, be it hatred, anger, jealousy, and so on and so forth. So he recommends that we reflect upon the consequences of that feeling, not only for ourselves, but for others as well. What is the energy that we're emanating when we're feeling angry, when we're feeling hatred? And he asks us to focus on the consequences, because when we start focusing on the consequences, that might help us understand and help us create the will to transform that feeling, to realize that it's truly not in our benefit to feel angry, so let us do something to transform it. So understanding the consequences can be a great tool to motivate us to improve our anger, to transform our anger. And then I can go a step further and say that one thing is knowing the consequences, and one step further would be to living those consequences. For example, using a very rude example, talking about smoking, a fairly common thing that happens in our society, right? When we smoke, we can understand the consequences, but just understanding those consequences is not enough to make us quit. And then eventually we might experience that consequence. We might experience a heart attack or lung cancer or a disease related to smoking. And when we're living that consequence, it's a bigger sign, it's a bigger eye opener, which can hopefully lead us to quitting. So as you can see, there's a few steps, right? One is recognizing the consequences of something that we're doing, and hopefully we can take action then. If we don't, then we can get to a point where we're living those consequences, so they hurt a little bit more. So hopefully we can open our eyes and take some action to transform whatever we're doing that's causing us harm. So Emmanuel is really focusing here on recognizing the damages that the anger, that the hatred can bring to us. And then, as loving as he is, he ends the sentence by saying that you can clearly eradicate it, focusing on our own renewal. So after you've realized that you feel anger at some times, after you've realized all the consequences, and perhaps you're experiencing those consequences right now, it tells us that we can clearly eradicate it. We have the power, we have the tools, we are able. There's that famous saying in Portuguese that says that God never gives us a cold bigger than our blanket. Deus nunca dá o frio maior que o cobertor. Meaning that no matter what we're going through, we do have the capacity, we do have the tools to overcome it, to focus on our renewal and transform ourselves so we can move away from experiencing those consequences. And then he starts to give us some advice. For example, a very simple one, and I really like the way he put this. He said, start your daily activities thinking about God and thanking for your possibilities to do good. It sounds very simple. It might sound naive, but it's actually quite powerful. And it's something that we can all do, right? It takes seconds. And hopefully tomorrow, when we all wake up, we can take 5 seconds to think about God. It doesn't necessarily need to be like a prayer, a long prayer. Just the fact of thinking about God, of thinking about Jesus, already connects us to them. And it can be something very quick. And because it's something very quick, we can extend this to, why not do this more often everywhere we are? It doesn't have to be just when we go to FSS, to the Spiritist Center, or when we're praying. It can be anywhere. It could be at a meeting at work, right? It takes a couple seconds just to think about God, think about Jesus, because it is very powerful. It can shift the way our emotions, our feelings are going, and it can help us open our minds to intuitions and inspirations when we need them. It's quite powerful, and this allows us to make, as our a good spiritist that we know, Artur Valadares, who, by the way, is who inspired me to do this talk. It's this talk that we're doing here today is based on a talk that he did. He says that thinking about God and thanking God for the possibilities to do good is, we are fertilizing our soil. We're fertilizing our hearts so we can, so the virtues that are within us can grow. So we can give space and effort to building and growing our peace, our love, our compassion, our empathy, and so on and so forth. And thanking for your possibilities to do good. It's thanking God for our day, for the next 24 hours that we're going to have, and how it becomes a possibility, it becomes an opportunity for us to do good. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But just the fact that we're thinking about God, it's already a good start. And if we go to one of the favorite books that Luis has read and talks to us about, the book Thought and Life, I believe it's chapter 9. It talks about connection. And Emmanuel tells us that when we're reading a text from somebody, we are connecting with the feelings of that author at that time. So and we can all feel this when we're reading a text from Emmanuel, we can feel some peace, we can feel some serenity, we can feel some love. That's because we're connecting to him, we're connecting to the feelings that he was trying to portray when he was writing all this. So again, just building that connection can tremendously help us, and it's not something that takes a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It just takes some discipline. And then on the third paragraph, he tells us to meditate rationally before the climate of superior knowledge that you already have, and the certainty that you are in the opportunity to express the best of yourself. So when we're talking about superior knowledge, what do you think that means? Superior knowledge. Here's where we can have a quick reflection about quality versus quantity. Especially if we're new to Spiritism, we might think that, oh, I only know a little bit. But that doesn't matter. The quantity is not the focus, but the quality. So if that little knowledge that we have came from a good source, right? If we know one passage from Christ, if we know one question from the Spirit's book, we can already meditate, we can already reflect upon it and learn and use that knowledge within our lives. So it's not about the quantity, but the quality of the knowledge that we choose to absorb and how we use it. A lot of us, we've already talked about this quite a bit. We often think about all the books that we have yet to read, as opposed to focus on the books that we have already read and all the knowledge that we've already acquired, and taking all that and bringing it to our lives through reflections and through actions. And that's what Emmanuel is telling us here, is to meditate rationally on this knowledge that we have. Why would we do that? For many reasons, one of them being that our knowledge becomes powerful, it becomes superior when we're able to incorporate those knowledges within our hearts, within our feelings, within our actions. What good is it to have a knowledge in our minds if we actually don't use it within ourselves, within our actions, within our reactions? So that's where the meditation comes in. And when he says meditate rationally, is so we can, again, bring in that knowledge within us. And in the certain, and he goes on to say, in the certainty that you are in the opportunity to express the best of yourselves. So when we meditate with the knowledge and we bring that into our hearts, through God's mercy, we're giving the opportunities to put those into practice, to express all those knowledges in our actions, to express the best of ourselves in that moment. But it all starts with the meditation. It all starts with a reflection. And that's what we try to bring into the talks that we give here. So it is more reflexive. So we're not just learning, but we're also taking that knowledge and reflecting, how does that apply within our lives? How can this knowledge make me a better person? How can this knowledge help me understand a little bit more about myself? Why am I feeling this way? Why do I react this way? And so on and so forth. It can be very enlightening, and it doesn't require a lot of knowledge. Right? It requires good knowledge, not a lot of it. And oh yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes like a flashlight, right? When you are in our moments a little bit of darkness, that knowledge works as a flashlight, like alleviates. And it's important for us to kind of, when you mention, maybe I read one book, 2, 3, whatever you read, you can use that as a flashlight in the moments that you're maybe going, as I mentioned last week, through those waves. And when those waves hit us, that knowledge can be that flashlight that can guide you and shine the light.
Well, that's great, Luis. Thank you. Exactly. It's that light that honestly helps us see hope within us and within all the opportunities that are around us. That light can help us see a struggle that we're going through as an opportunity. I remember Givaldo Franco, he says that somebody asked him to summarize the gospel to him. And Givaldo said, I can summarize it in one word, and that is love. So basically the entire gospel, if you read the entire gospel, if you interpret the entire gospel, you're going to learn about love. So if it takes you learning one passage from Christ, and you can already feel love, you can already learn love, you've already learned what somebody can take the entire gospel 3-4 times to learn it, right? So again, it's not how much of it you've read, but it's how much of it you've absorbed and you've brought it into your heart and learned. And let's keep going. So the fourth one is when he says, think of the companions up to now capable of inducing you to bitterness. For our brothers with imperfect qualities for the time being are just as much as ours. So here now Emmanuel is getting into an area of relationships and helping us through those relationships. So he's saying that think about those companions that are capable of inducing you to bitterness. So those people who induce us to feel bitter, to feel anger, to feel hatred, and so on and so forth. The first reflection that I wanted to make, and Sonia has talked extensively about this, is that Emmanuel used the word inducing here, rightfully so, because people can induce us to feel something, but they can't make us feel something. What do we mean by that? Just think of a person that irritates you, right? When they say good morning and they irritate you, but when they say good morning to somebody else, they would have a different reaction. So again, it's just showing that people can induce, can influence, but they can't make us feel something. What the feeling that we get from somebody's words or actions, they depend on what we bring within ourselves, the knowledge, and so on and so forth. So that was just a brief reflection, but what we wanted to focus on here is that Emmanuel tells us here that our companions that induced us to feel bitterness because of their imperfect qualities, he says those are just as much as ours, meaning that we are just as imperfect as those who have induced us to bitterness. So when we're in a state of anger because of something that somebody did to us, let us remind ourselves that we're just as imperfect. The same way that somebody can make us angry, I can guarantee that we also make other people angry, right? So this helps us understand and curb a little bit of our instinct to react. Especially in times like this, times of war especially, remembering, and this is something that Artur brings to us, that how about we think how Christ would look at that person that is causing us anger. Remembering that the same way that God loves us, God also loves that person. The same way. So this hopefully can help us release some of the anger that we might be feeling towards people, especially involved in the war right now. Because God, as we always talk about here, is merciful. is just, and he loves us unconditionally, all of us. He doesn't have favorites. And that can help us truly, especially in situations like this, not to let ourselves be angry and become angry to the point where it starts to reverberate in other places of our lives, right? We start to become impatient, and then we can be rude to other people who don't deserve it. So again, remembering that God loves us all equally can certainly help us through that. And then he says that in any trace of bitterness settles in your heart regarding the unfortunate behavior of someone through actions that you consider harmful to your teachings, apologize to that person, trying to forget the fault that was naturally impulsive. Arthur Valadares, he brings a reflection here that is very, very powerful, because he says that we can never, and never is a strong word, but we can never understand 100% why somebody's doing something. Even though we think we might know that person really well, it could be our daughters, our sons, our wives, our husbands, our mom and dad. Even if we think we know them really well, we cannot know 100% what's driving their actions. Spiritism brings us the knowledge of multiple lives, right? So even though we might think we know our mom this lifetime, she's had quite a few before. So we don't fully comprehend somebody. And that is why we can never know fully why somebody did something. And why are we talking about this? Is because when we don't fully understand why somebody did something, we can't judge them. Because again, we don't know, or we don't fully understand why they did something. So that doesn't allow us to judge. We can certainly analyze it, but we can't judge. We can't, there's no room for judgment. And we can go to Christ to help us with this, because Christ truly knew why we do things, or he truly knows why we do things. And yet he doesn't judge us. He has all the knowledge, he fully understands why we do things, yet he doesn't judge. So who are we to judge others? And this brings us to the reflection about forgiveness. When Emmanuel says, trying to forget the fault, right? This leads us to think about forgiveness. And we've talked about forgiveness quite a bit as well. And we like to reflect about forgiveness as being something that first we have control over. Second, that we are the first ones to benefit from forgiveness. And third, forgiveness can be a very freeing process. It can free us from resentment. Resentment being the feeling that we keep reiterating the faults that somebody did to us, right? We keep reliving that moment and just creating more and more anger within us. So forgiveness can free ourselves from the resentment, free ourselves from the anger, and it can help us again to build peace in us, as it is the focus of our talk today, right? and the invitation then is to reflect about how are we judging others, and are we able to forgive, right? And recognizing those people that are harder to forgive, right? And understand that they're there for a reason, and one of the reasons is for us to learn how to forgive. So the sixth paragraph, again, is talking about others. He says, ponder that if others make mistakes, we also make mistakes quite often as spirits still linked to the multiple tracts of terrestrial evolution. And the reflection here is bringing it back to us. How, when we see somebody making a mistake, if we start to think that, oh, I also make mistakes, we can start to reflect a little bit more about our mistakes, about ourselves, help us being more self-aware, understanding, first recognizing the feelings that we feel, the emotions that we feel, and then start to understand why, and so on and so forth. And why is Emmanuel bringing this to us? And this is where we start talking about love and compassion. It's because a measure that we can do of compassion and of empathy is how well we know ourselves. So let me explain that a little bit better. Our ability to be compassionate, our ability to be empathetic to others is proportional to how much we know about ourselves, how compassionate we are and empathetic we are with ourselves. So it's a true measure of it. So the more we start to be self-aware, the more we start to be compassionate about the things we did in the past, the more we'll be able to be compassionate to others, to be understanding with other mistakes, and so on and so forth. And we can see this quite a bit throughout the gospel, and we'll bring some examples later on. But when I am very stringent to other people, when I don't compromise, that is a reflection that I also am very strict with myself. I don't allow myself to make mistakes. And that just shows itself as us being very strict with others. So again, it's just an invitation to reflect about our awareness, and our mistakes, and how that can help us to build compassion and empathy towards others as well. And then he says, do not accept yourself as infallible in order to leniently understand those who by chance break our trust. And the first thing here is, what is infallible? Do you know what that word means? And why is Emmanuel even bringing that here? And infallible is very similar to what we were talking about just now. It's those of us who think that we know best, that we are better than other people, and that our knowledge makes us great. And we tend to try and mold people to be the way that we want them to be. We don't allow them to be who they are, but we want to mold them into what we think is best. And this always leads us to deception, disappointment, disillusion, because we can't really control others. And Emmanuel is saying to us here that being infallible can compromise our ability to forgive, our ability to be lenient. Lenient means indulgente with others. By chance, break our trust. So especially when people betray us, when we tend to be infallible, when we tend to think that we are the best, and somebody betrays us, it can be really tough. It can be really hard to forgive. Because when we think we're the best, when we think that we are really good, we don't accept the fact that somebody betrayed us. How dare somebody betray us? How dare somebody do something bad to me? And that really makes it tough for us to forgive. Hence, Emmanuel is bringing this to us here, to this reflection.
Victor,
Yes.
I was reading this, I also thought, like, if we believe we cannot fail, like we're infallible, it may make us think that we are better than others. So then, okay, that person still makes mistakes, I'll forgive them because I'm better than them. Like, I could feel that way too. That's another way that I read this text, this part. So I don't know, maybe it's just saying about myself than others. There's that saying, right? Like the way we react to someone's actions towards us says more about us than about them. As we were saying, like how we react depends on what we bring with us, right? Of course, it's not a real forgiveness if you think you're better than others. You're just being like, okay, that's fine. I'm superior, so I'll accept anything. So it all goes back to that first text, like knowing and reflecting about ourselves, and learning why we noticing and realize that we are having some actions, some anger or whatever feelings, recognize that we still have them. And then why, right?
Yes, exactly, Anna. And what you brought just now, that's how can I say? It's a really high level of not being self-aware. We're so blind that we don't even recognize how much what others are doing can affect us. We feel so disconnected to others that what they do don't even have a reaction within us. So it's a deep lack of self-awareness. So thank you for bringing that as well. And got 3 more paragraphs. The first one, the 8th one, sorry. Emmanuel again asks us to reflect. And he says, reflect in the intimacy of the heart that no one can accomplish anything without the help of someone, so that you can take advantage of the mature values of the collaborators that divine providence has entrusted to you without spoiling their still green values. So there are many things that we can reflect about here. And 2 points that I wanted to bring to our attention is, and something that Jesus did or taught us not to do, is when a lot of times we might reduce a person to one mistake they made. For example, when somebody fell, it's a very rude, right, example, but when somebody fell, we might look at them as weak, and then we tag them as weak, and we forget to see all the other qualities that we have. Right? When somebody does something bad, especially nowadays, we tend to cancel them, like declare hate towards that person when they did one mistake. But the person is not that one mistake. The person is much more than that. We all make mistakes. We all have our bad inclinations and our good inclinations. And it all goes to, are we going to extend a hand and help them, or are we going to turn around and exclude them and think again that we're better than them? And and not doing good to us and to our society. And what Jesus did with this is, can we imagine if Jesus had reduced some of his apostles to their struggles, right? For example, Peter was quite feisty and quite very not lenient towards others, and Jesus could have reduced him to that lack of empathy, but he decided not to, because he knew that Peter was so much more than that. So this is again another great reflection about this. And this is something that I thought about last night. It's again, it's a very rude analogy, but for those of you who know mango trees, here in Brazil right now, it was just mango season. So I'm walking around and I see all these mango trees, and I see all these tiny little green mangoes. They're everywhere. The tree's full of them. And how do we look at them? When we see a tree and we see all these green mangoes, we think about the potential. We think about, oh my God, in a few weeks, these are going to be ripe. These are going to be delicious. Now, let's bring that reflection to us or to others. Pretending that we are the trees and the green mangoes are the things that we don't do quite well, are still our not disabilities, but are still our bad inclinations. Jesus sees those as potentials. They see that even though we're making mistakes here, even though we have some of these green mangoes, Jesus can see the potential of us becoming ripe. So how is our reflection when we see a mistake or a fault of our own or of others? Think about that green mango. Do we see them? Do we see the potential of them being ripe in a few weeks, in a few months, in a few incarnations? But do we see that as a potential to be ripe, or do you condemn them for still being green? So just a reflection that I thought about yesterday, and it clicked with me quite a bit. Think about the green mango. So the second last paragraph, he says, refrain from lamenting over failures and difficulties that have already passed, and commit yourself to rebuilding your own peace on the basis of service and discernment. So we can always relate to building a castle in the sand, hopefully. And then you build something and then the water comes and destroys everything. We can start to lament over what was destroyed, or we can start building another one. And the same goes to our own selves, right? When we've done mistakes in the past, and how much do we spend lamenting over those mistakes, those failures from the past, instead of rebuilding our present and our future? Arthur says it so nicely. He says that the past is a place for reference, not for residence. So the past is something that can help us use as a reference to guide how we're going to act today to build a better tomorrow. And then, because we're almost out of time, just want to end with the last paragraph when he says, let us not forget that in the most complicated circumstances, life requires us to do good. And that for this very reason, any occasion for each of us is a time to understand and bless, help, and serve. So again, realizing that at any occasion, any occasion of our lives, it is a time, it is an opportunity for us to understand ourselves or others, to bless ourselves or others, to help, to serve ourselves and others. So hopefully this can truly help us understand and start to build the peace in us, start to prune those irritations that before it gets too big, like weeds in our garden, that we can prune them and shift into peace, shift into serenity, shift into love. And to end, who better to help us build peace than the peaceful master of us all, who, in light of all our mistakes, in light of all our bad inclinations, he was there asking us to come to him. And above it all, we know that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. We can say this many, many times. And the more we say it, the more we can feel that easiness and the more we can feel that lightness. Because his love can truly help us through our lives. It can be transformational if we choose to accept it and if we choose to utilize his path as an example of our lives. So that was all I had. I wanted to expand a little bit more, but we're out of time. Do you have any questions or comments? Or I know you guys are anxiously waiting for the passes.
Thank you.
Anything on YouTube, please?
No.
Let's see.
Just a good morning.
Sorry, what did you say?
Just good morning.
Just good morning.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Okay. So it was great to be here with you virtually. And I know you're going to your passes now. So, Luis, do we do the prayer now or after? I apologize.
Can do the prayer now.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll turn on the music.
Okay, thanks. So let us close our eyes right now and take a deep breath. Think about Jesus. Just think about the Lord and realize that this connection with them is very easy to do. And we ask, Master, that you can help us in building the peace within our hearts, freeing ourselves from any resentment, transforming our anger, and being able to be more kind, more compassionate, more empathetic with our own selves. That we have the ability to look at us and love ourselves, and as a result, love others, love our community, our humanity. Thank you, Lord, for the reflections today, for the love that we shared and continue to share, for this community, and for this second family that we have at FSS. Thank you for being able to reopen, be able to be present, to share the laughs, to share our thoughts, our feelings, and hopefully grow each and every one of us as a communion and as individuals, sons and daughters of God. Thank you, and so be it.